With the recent recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding industrial wind development, it is important for you to understand not only the effect on the citizens these recommendations will have for generations to come, but also the bias that many of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Properties Committee, and County Board members have shown toward the wind industry throughout this entire process. The result has been very little change to the rules that have been in place for over 10 years now in Lee County, and if allowed to pass the County Board, a waste of a great deal of time and effort for the many informed citizens who have been involved with the process from the beginning. From the initial public hearing, when a County Board member admitted that all of this was a done deal, to the series of ad hoc meetings, where a citizen of Bureau County and employee of the wind developer was chosen to serve as a member of the committee, while visiting citizens of the county were illegally kept silent, to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which allowed the developer to write a portion of the regulations and submit it to be voted on without allowing it to be seen by the public, nor read in its entirety prior to voting. It has become painfully obvious that what was allowed to transpire over the past year was simply wrong. All holding positions in county government have a primary responsibility of serving the citizens of this county. Some of those in the recordings you are about to hear hold influential positions on the county board, including the chair and vice chair. The way the members of the committee in this recording treat citizens bringing forth concern is outrageous. The disrespect they show for fellow citizens, however, disturbing as it is not the reason for this message. The manipulation, ignorance, and shallow reasoning that the committee members offer as they discuss the issues forces any intelligent, reasoning person to suspect that the content of the ordinance before you is ill-gotten, and that the motivation behind it has not been based on the responsibility of the Zoning Board of Appeals and you to protect this county's citizens. Fortunately, the Open Meetings Act allows for the recording of public meetings and the delivery of this message to you. You would not have received this any other way. This information is important for you to make an informed decision. What you are about here is cause for concern, and undoubtedly will be for many of your colleagues and others who have also received a copy. Many citizens are outraged over this. It is important you take the time to consider why.
Are all the rest of you here for the wind, the moratorium? Going to have one speaker amongst you? Or are we going to hear the same thing 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 times?
Did you catch that? That was the chairman of the Properties Committee, the current vice chairman of the County Board.
Later in the meeting, after concerns were raised, the chairman explained why the mainstream employee was kept on the ad hoc committee as a non-voting member.
Oh, no, that's not necessarily the fact. He was told, and everybody else was told, that because of the fact that it came to light that he was part of he worked for the windmill company down there, worked for Mainstream, he was kept on the committee as a non-voting member because of his expertise in it, and because of the fact that he's been involved with windmills, and he was instrumental in getting that windmill down there at Brewery Valley High School. He's been on the board, he's treasurer of that particular board, he's been president of that board, and that was the reason he was put on the committee at the outset. And when it came to light that he was actually a Mainstream employee, that's when he was told that he was a non-voting member of the committee, but he was kept on there for his expertise.
Concerns were then raised over the elimination of all voting on the committee shortly after voting rights were revoked from the wind industry employee. Listen to the explanation.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, but there's motions and seconds.
No, after the state's attorney advised the committee they're not a voting committee. They're strictly a recommendation committee. So what the process will be is all the discussions that are taking place every week or every meeting, let's put it that way. At the end, then we're going to be reviewing all of the suggestions, all the concerns that have been raised by by you or anybody else on the committee, whether they're talking or not. I don't know if anybody, I know you're very vocal about it, and that's fine, I think it's great. But at the end, there will be then reviewing the minutes. Here are the things that Mark Wagner is wanting to make a recommendation. Here's Craig Burrow's suggestions. Here's Ron Conovan's suggestions. Keith Bolton, whatever. There's suggestions. They're not voting on it. So they're going to make those recommendations then to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Once the Zoning Board of Appeals starts up their process, everybody's there. It's an open meeting. They'll have the public speaking. And I think you're aware of that, Mark. I think we had that conversation.
Why did the chairman of the Properties Committee not know that voting was not taking place? From his question, it sounded as if he believed there should have been. Listen to the Properties Committee chair, the current vice chairman of the county board, explain the purpose of the ad hoc committee, only to be corrected again by the zoning officer.
The purpose of what the request was to take these 10 conditions. I believe Chris is gone now. I think 10 conditions, Chris?
Pardon me?
How many conditions in that ordinance?
Yeah,
a list of X amount of conditions. And that is what dictates where they go, why they go there, how far from here, how far from there. And that's what you're doing, is you're going over those conditions. That was the purpose of setting up the committee. I don't believe it was to review the entire ordinance, it was to cover the conditions.
It's to review everything. We should review the ordinance while we're at it. The ordinance is very generic. It really, if you read that, it doesn't have the setbacks and the factors that he's concerned about.
But that's how they...
And that's the way we set it up 10 years ago, to have the ability to alter conditions per site. In case that there's a reason that we need to move that tower away from this, we have that power as a body, as a zoning board of appeals, to put a condition on that particular site. That's the reason they're set up in conditions.
The chairman later defends the makeup of the committee.
I felt from the beginning that this committee, we have 5 people on that zoning board that know more about the wind turbine development in this county than anybody that we had at present. Mr. Bolin was put on there originally to speak on behalf of the school district down there, and was retained because of what I just said, that he has the expertise to speak on several matters that we're interested in. You were put on as a voice of the people that wanted more restrictions on windmills. And Mr. Pfeiffer originally was put on as an educational type person who was basically unbiased, from what he spoke. And I have yet to get any other indication other than that. What the meetings I've been to, he may not speak a lot, but he speaks more from a scientific standpoint than anything else. I realize his affiliation with SAWC, wanting to have courses in wind turbine maintenance and mechanics and so on and so forth, but he also speaks from he's an educated view.
So, from his statement, the 5 zoning board members know more about wind turbines than anyone else in the county at the present time. Did you know one of the members, when the topic of noise regulations came up for a vote, stated that the issue was over his head, and that he just wanted to try the ordinance as it had been written? This does not sound like someone who knows more than anyone in the county regarding wind turbines. As for the Sauk Valley Community College representative who was placed on it to provide an opinion from an educated standpoint, he has not been to a meeting since it was determined not to be feasible to place a turbine on the school's property.
Yes.
It sounds like to me that in your comment that you don't think you've been listened to. It sounds like they're hearing what you're saying, because I'm hearing what you're saying, but I don't necessarily have to agree with what you're saying. And it sounds like to me is that you want more people to agree with your opinion about the windmills not being present or limited in the county.
Here the chairman attempts to make a point that the efforts of the health officer were not good enough somehow. He first states that the officer took an issue all the way to the head of the state EPA, but then later seems to contradict himself, stating that it was just a chance meeting.
I guess even though we bring forth people on a county level that have talked about this or talked about this with their superiors, like a Wendy, like a Tim Trader. I mean, Tim Trader carried one idea of a hazardous waste issue all the way up to the director of the state EPA, and yet that does not appear to be good enough, you know, as a topic of conversation, and that's what disappoints me. I mean, I wasn't at that meeting, but it's my opinion, he went to his regional director, and he happened to be at a meeting with the state head of the EPA in regards to a concrete being a hazardous waste, and his opinion was not taken for what, you know, I mean, how high up the chain do you need to go? The issue at that point, though, was whether concrete left in the ground under decommissioning, after decommissioning, was considered then a hazardous waste. That was the question he was asked, is it a hazardous waste? And he said no. And he went all the way to the head director of the EPA, and they still said no. And yet, that doesn't appear to be taken into account.
I never said I.
The following portion of the meeting was a discussion regarding the extension of the moratorium. Listen to the logic used by the members of the committee for not extending it. Does it make sense?
I spoke at the January county board meeting asking that you consider extending the moratorium on wind energy conversion systems. I won't go through my whole discussion, but basically I indicated that and it's clear today that this review has not been completed. It's not near being completed. It hasn't even gone to the zoning board yet, and the ad hoc committee isn't done with their process. The process has proven to be more complicated and time-consuming than anybody thought. And in addition, we haven't been able to take full advantage of the 6 months that we had on this moratorium because nothing started until November, and the moratorium is ending in February according to the resolution. And then finally, and most importantly, there are several topics that have simply not been addressed adequately to date and need further discussion. That being, in my opinion, noise, decommissioning, property values, and setbacks. So I am requesting that the Properties Committee make a motion to extend the moratorium for another 6 months and then bring that to the full county board for a vote at next week's meeting.
Well, it was not acted on at the last county board meeting. I don't know if this committee wants to act on it right now or not. I'm not ready to extend the moratorium.
I'm not either.
Me neither.
Why not?
Simply
The
because...
job's not done.
Right, but the meetings will go on. It's just, we're not going to extend the moratorium.
But the whole purpose of the moratorium was to conduct this review.
But then it will go on. It won't go on without the moratorium.
So what happens when a wind
Ogle
developer
County
comes
is
in?
going to do away with their moratorium too.
They extended their moratorium for 6 months, didn't
Right, but they're not going to extend it again, from what I understand. Well, we're not going to, I would not vote to extend it.
So what
The
happens?
committee meetings will go on, and then the recommendations will be made to the zoning board. And
I guess
come back to the county board.
I guess I'd like an explanation from anybody who said they wouldn't vote for a moratorium as to why you wouldn't vote for a moratorium when the reason for the moratorium, which was to develop a committee and review the conditions and ordinances, that work has not been done. So why wouldn't you recommend extending the moratorium to allow the completion of that work?
6 months was there, that's what